Kaingaroa Forest Village, Central North Island, a handful of streets surrounded by the largest planted forest in the Southern Hemisphere. 2009. 2 deaths in the area, both suspected to be gang-related. Local iwi Ngati Manawa respond by placing a rahui, a ban on violence and gang colours, over the whole township. A community leader reaches out to the gangs directly, asking them to put a stop to it. One man answers. He tells the community leader his gang is behind the idea. He says something else too, something that will follow him for the next decade. He says the gang isn't a threat sitting outside the community. The gang is the community. That man leads the tribesmen. Over the years that follow, he becomes the person journalists call whenever there's tension between the tribesmen and their longtime rivals, the mongrel mob, the peace broker, the one who picks up the phone. And then, a decade later, in a small house on a Murupara street, a group of his own members are accused of attacking mongrel mob associates badly enough to put 2 of them in hospital. He's charged too, and in the High Court, his own lawyer doesn't deny he was there. He argues something far more specific, that his client came to that address as a peacemaker, not a lawbreaker. His name is Peter Hunt. Stick around, because what happened in that courtroom raises a question nobody's fully answered. If you find value in the work that goes into pulling these records together, a subscribe genuinely helps. This one took a fair bit of digging to get right. Let's start at the beginning. Murupara sits on the Bay of Plenty side of the central North Island, right beside Kaingaroa Forest, the founding ground of the tribesmen since 1980. Peter Hunt led the chapter there for years, representing the club's southern regional interests through the 2000s and into the following decade. Reporting from the period describes Kaingaroa Forest Village bluntly, a scattering of rough streets, isolated, hemmed in by trees. Police at the time argued the community needed to take the village back from what they called thugs. Hunt's answer to that framing was consistent and specific. This isn't an occupying force. This is us. That distinction, gang as extended whānau rather than gang as external threat, became the thread running through almost everything Hunt said publicly for the next 10 years. After the 2009 Rahui, community campaigner Pem Bird confirmed that Hunt had personally reached out to signal the tribesmen's commitment to a truce with the mongrel mob. Bird said the move would ease fears of retaliation and let the community focus on working together rather than bracing for the next incident. Around the same stretch of time, Hunt put together the tribesmen's first motorcycle poker run, an event drawing tribesmen and Killer Bees members in from across the North Island. Police issued warnings beforehand, worried about gang members getting out of hand. Hunt's response was that the gathering was meant to be a peaceful, fun event, with the winner walking away with a trophy, cash, and taonga contributed by Ngati Manawa themselves. It would only turn ugly, he said, if police got in the way. By 2011, Hunt was 47. A new pressure had appeared. The Australian Rebels Motorcycle Club was expanding into New Zealand, and rumours circulated that tribesmen chapters were patching over wholesale. Hunt shut that down publicly. What was actually happening, he said, was a handful of members with genuine family ties to Rebels members in Australia making a personal choice, not an organisational takeover. He went further, invoking the tribesmen's standing as tangata whenua, telling one reporter the only thing his club had in common with the rebels was a general distrust of the system and a taste for Harley-Davidsons. Buried in that same 2011 report was a single line. Hunt was currently on bail, following what was described only as a serious clash with the mongrel mob in Murupara the year before. 26 August 2019. A house on Tower Street, Murupara, belonging to a mongrel mob family. According to the Crown, a large group of tribesmen members clashed with mongrel mob associates at the property, leaving 2 of them seriously injured. Rotorua Crown Solicitor Fletcher Pilditch told the High Court the 2 gangs remained fiercely territorial, with tension flaring over something as small as wearing colours in the wrong part of town. Peter Hunt, by now referred to in reporting as leader of the Kaingaroa chapter, was charged alongside members Chevy Mickey and J.D. Delamere. The charges: injuring with intent to cause grievous bodily harm, wounding with intent to injure, and participating in a criminal group. When the trial opened at the High Court in Rotorua in September 2020, before Justice Patrick Keane, the judge cleared the public gallery, while Mongrel Mob associate Wiremu Hiko gave evidence against the three men. In closing, the lawyers for Mickey and Delamere argued their clients simply weren't at the scene. Hunt's lawyer took a different tack entirely, one that placed his client squarely at the address that night, but reframed what he was doing there. The submission reported plainly, Hunt was present as a peacemaker, not a lawbreaker. The man whose public identity for a decade had been built on diffusing exactly this kind of confrontation was now standing trial over one, with his own defense conceding he was in the room and asking the jury to believe he was trying to stop it rather than lead it. Here's where this account has to be careful. The charges were real. The trial happened. The Crown's theory was that a pack of tribesmen members carried out the attack. The defense theory for Hunt specifically was that his presence at Tower Street was to calm things down, not escalate them. What the available reporting on this case does not confirm, despite a thorough search of court coverage from the period, is the actual verdict. Whether Hunt, Mickey, or Delamere were convicted or acquitted on any of the three charges simply isn't documented in the sources this account was built from. That's a genuine gap, not a detail glossed over for convenience. A charge is not a conviction. A defense submission is not a jury's finding. What can be said with confidence is that the incident itself, independent of how it was ultimately resolved in law, placed Hunt's name inside a courtroom story that sat in direct, uncomfortable tension with everything he'd spent a decade telling journalists about who he was. Peter Hunt, president of the Tribesmen chapter, based in Murupara and Kaingaroa Forest Village, the club's original 1980 home ground. 2009, publicly backed a truce with the Mongrel Mob after a community rahui followed two suspected gang-related deaths. Organised a joint tribesman killer bees motorcycle event with prizes contributed by local iwi. 2010, reportedly involved in a serious clash with the Mongrel Mob in Murupara, on bail by the following year. 2011, publicly denied a mass tribesman defection to the Australian rebels, framing departures as individual family decisions. August 2019, charged alongside two other tribesman members over an alleged group attack on Mongrel Mob associates in Murupara that left two people seriously injured. September 2020, stood trial at the High Court in Rotorua. His defense argued he was present as a peacemaker. Trial outcome not confirmed in the reporting available for this account. Here's the tension at the center of Peter Hunt's story, and it doesn't disappear regardless of how that 2020 trial ended. For roughly 10 years, he was the public face of a specific idea, that a gang could be stitched into the life of a small, isolated town rather than treated as something to be cut out of it. He negotiated truces, he ran events with iwi involvement, and prizes drawn from the community's own institutions. He pushed back, explicitly, against an outside club trying to absorb something he framed as belonging to the whenua and the people on it. That wasn't incidental color in a few newspaper quotes. It was the entire architecture of how he presented tribesman leadership, year after year, to anyone who asked. And then in 2019, the same two gangs he'd spent a decade trying to keep apart collided again, hard enough this time to produce charges of grievous bodily harm. Whatever a jury ultimately decided about Hunt's own role that night, the fact that it happened at all says something this series keeps running into, case after case, across two countries. One person's genuine commitment to peace doesn't necessarily hold when the underlying rivalry between two organizations never actually resolves. It just goes quiet for a while. Hunt could broker a truce in 2009. He couldn't stop, a decade on, the exact kind of confrontation that truce was built to prevent. And there's a second thread worth pulling on. If a man walks into the middle of a serious group assault and his own defense later argues he was there to stop it rather than start it, what does that suggest about the role some gang leaders actually occupy inside these structures? Not always the one giving the order, sometimes the one trying, not always successfully, to keep a lid on something that's already moving. For anyone here in Aotearoa, thinking about what this means beyond one small Bay of Plenty town, the lesson probably isn't really about Peter Hunt as an individual. It's about how thin the line runs between the version of gang leadership that speaks fluently in the language of truce and whānau, and the reality of what happens when a decades-old rivalry between two gangs finally boils over, no matter who's been trying to keep it simmering down. What do you reckon? Can someone be a genuine peacemaker for a decade and still end up standing in the middle of the exact violence they spent all that time trying to prevent?